on our panel, I'm very excited to first welcome, so please welcome, contributor to Wasabi Wallet and CEO of CK Snarks, Max Hillebrand. And co-founder and CEO of Vexel, Leah Petrášová.
Okay.
Further, managing partner at Value of Bitcoin Advisors, Jörg Hermsdorf.
I hope so.
Further on the panel, we have CEO of DBFi, Max K. And a legendary, awesome moderator for this panel. He's the CEO of Synonym, and his name is John Carvalho.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, we've got a great panel of people providing peer-to-peer products. Let's just get right started with the first question. We'll start with Jörg as the first answer. We all know Bitcoin can be used as permissionless, peer-to-peer money, censorship resistant, etc. How do you all think that the concept of privacy affects the qualities of Bitcoin that we all appreciate and why we care about it?
Well, actually, when I first looked at Bitcoin in 2010, I thought, oh, this is bad for privacy, because I was researching really strong privacy networks 5 years earlier, like Tor and ITP. And I was a bit scared to even keep it running for longer than 2 years, two weeks, because I thought it's just a small group of people who is trying to bootstrap a new monetary system, and everything is like public and traceable. But I underestimated kind of the opponents, as first they ignore you and then they laugh at you. So Bitcoin grew strong enough to not be shut down in the early beginnings. And later I really loved and learned to love its simple design. And I think the property that almost anybody on the planet can now audit the money supply is so unique that it is the ultimate thing to preserve. And since privacy is a cat and mouse game, if there would have been strong privacy baked in at the base layer from the beginning, we would have lots of fights and hard forks over the past years to always keep that standard from 2009 and keep it upgraded. So now we have a system which is open to audit, and there are ways to build in good privacy in other layers, which keeps the base protocol stable, and that's what I think is extremely valuable. And I'm fine with it that people who need strong privacy need to go an extra mile or two to do that. And so I think something like the Lightning Network is an easy upgrade of some privacy. It's not maybe the Edward Snowden or Julian Assange level of privacy only a few people need, but we can build better privacy on top of an open, non-private network. That's what I think. So we just have to be persistent on that.
Mm-hmm. Max Hillebrand, do you agree with what he's saying, and do you have any other insights on how privacy affects and interacts with Bitcoin qualities?
Yeah, compared to much earlier designs, Bitcoin's privacy is way worse. Right? However, Bitcoin would also not be possible without the concept of privacy either. Right? You need to have private keys, a secret that only you know, in order to prove the ownership of a coin and move it, ultimately. So without the ability to not reveal your private key, Bitcoin doesn't work for you. And likewise, you need to have the privacy of your own computer to run a full node and verify all of these transactions. If you do not control the software that runs on your computer, you simply cannot use Bitcoin as it was intended.
Mm-hmm. Leah?
I would offer a less technical perspective. You named censorship resistance, you named permissionless. permissionlessness of Bitcoin, and you named the store of value aspect of it. I think that's the biggest selling point of Bitcoin as it is. And the question was, how does it interact with privacy? My perspective is that there is no way, there is no chance to achieve any of those qualities if you don't have Bitcoin that you obtained privately. That means peer-to-peer, and that means without KYC, and that you're not storing in your own like self-custody solution. That's it. Like I think privacy is in the very heart of these three aspects.
Mm-hmm. Max?
That's a basic property of Bitcoin, privacy. But the great thing about Bitcoin is that privacy is kind of optional. So you can choose to whom to disclose certain information, and you can choose to stay fully private. So I think it's not a question how this aligns. It's already built in. It just adds extra flexibility, and that's the beauty of the Bitcoin. Because in some like altcoins, like Monero, for example, privacy is by default. So if you want to disclose something, it's pretty hard to do that, especially if you're building like more TradeFi type of solutions or trading solutions, which require a certain level of, unfortunately, KYC or KYB.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's stick with you for the next question. What do you think are common misconceptions about privacy in Bitcoin, and what are like practical ways that Bitcoiners can actually manage and achieve privacy?
I think the main misconceptions are that, like again, that Bitcoin, it's coming from the mass market outside of the Bitcoin. I would say that Bitcoin is like highly private stuff, not transparent, used by criminals, whatever. But actually, that's an open ledger. You can check any transactions. It's even more open than the banking system. You don't need to have a certain special systems. You just go to Block Explorer and you see a lot of information. And if you know the endpoint of any transaction, you can basically track everything that you need. So that's an optionality. And I think to achieve privacy for Bitcoiners, well, it depends whether you need that or you don't need that. But of course, if you need that, definitely privacy comes with self-custody. That's number one. I agree with Leo on that. And using non-KYC solutions to acquire Bitcoin is also good options. Coin joins, obviously, but it's kind of tricky question now, sensitive, I would say. But there's a lot of things, you should probably start with very basic things. If you don't have Bitcoin, try to obtain it through non-KYC solutions such as Bisq Network, Vexel, any other solutions out there, HODL. And then, you learn how to self-custody. That's already a big first step comparing to any other traditional legacy system out there.
Yeah. Jörg, you have any practical tips for improving privacy for normal Bitcoin users?
Yeah. So some people don't have the option to, or don't think they have an easy option to obtain them through peer-to-peer trades. But at least if you keep it under self-custody, you should separate KYC acquired Bitcoin and non-KYC acquired Bitcoin, so that you have optionality in the future what you want to do with it. And so this is something which is easy, but many people not immediately realize that they can have these HD wallets where they have multiple kind of accounts and just segregate them properly.
Sounds good. Leah?
Well, common misconception, I have two immediately coming up to my mind. First, that if you purchase Bitcoin with a KYC, then your name and ID is somewhere on the Bitcoin blockchain. And it's like inherently forever connected. Yeah, I cannot stress this enough. Bitcoin does not care about your ID. The KYC record is not on a Bitcoin blockchain. It's not on that particular Bitcoin or part of Bitcoin. You don't have written your name. KYC record is having your information given up to a certain entity, typically a third party, either a custodian or an exchange, and that's the record. That's the KYC record. Bitcoin does not care. The real world cares. It's this digital trace you left and you cannot control anymore. So that's the first misconception. I cannot stress enough how many people actually still think that this is true. Second misconception is that peer-to-peer is hard and is hard to accessible. It's hard to access. It is not. It's certainly harder than like just signing up for an exchange, getting out your credit card and just paying with the card. But when you are choosing this solution over peer-to-peer, it might be slightly more challenging. You are actually overpaying greatly with the amount of data you leave behind.
That's fair. And Max, what about you? Have any good misconceptions and tips?
Yeah, I think one really fundamental problem is that people underestimate the extent of the problem that is surveillance and the capabilities that are today at hand for spying at an extremely low cost on an incredibly large amount of people. The technological advancements of the last couple of years are extremely scary in this regard, and this problem needs to be dealt with quite swiftly. And the second misconception, however, to give a bit of more hopeful outlook, is that small steps matter a lot. You don't need to throw your entire life upside down. You can take small steps in the right direction frequently and consistently, and within a rather short amount of time, you will have made a substantial improvement to your own privacy. The thing with surveillance is it's an exponential problem. The more data you have about someone, the exponentially more you can find out about that person. But the cool thing is that works into our benefit when we go the other direction. Right? When we're currently here and revealing a lot of information unknowingly about ourselves, making that conscious and taking steps in the other direction decreases the problem of the surveillance really, really fast when you start out with. So the largest benefit to your own personal privacy you will actually have when you take these first steps to just marginally improve your situation. But that's very easy, and everyone can do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the end, like at its core, privacy is just metadata and witnesses, and all you can do is minimize them to only the people that need to be involved. And as long as you're trying to do that in some way, you're managing your privacy. Leah, for you, Vexel allows users to list anything for sale privately. You have this peer-to-peer marketplace based on Web of Trust. How does this model contribute to the Bitcoin ecosystem, and how does it compare, using Web of Trust to using KYC? Because Web of Trust is also a kind of reputational tool, but it's not KYC. So how does Vexel do this differently?
So what our reputational model offers, it's actually it actually gives you the ability to do just the amount of KYC where you're able to selectively reveal yourself, if needed, to a level that is actually necessary for the counterparty and no one else. And what I think the biggest innovation or that Vexel is bringing to the table in the ecosystem is basically taking the real-world reputation you have out there and putting it into an app. No one ever did it, to my knowledge. And if you think about it, a social reputation is something you're building through your whole life. It can't be faked. It can be just easily thrown away. You cannot reinvent it in no time. So from my perspective, it's superior reputation to any other kind of synthetic reputation you have in other peer-to-peer marketplaces.
Thanks. Max Hillebrand, with Wasabi, you're doing, I don't know what term you prefer, but I'll say coin mixing. And so how does coin mixing and what Wasabi's offering as a product, help Bitcoiners manage their privacy?
Yeah, I think this is a very important question on how should we design software services or tools. And I agree with Leah that it's a good foundational assumption to only reveal about the user as little as is necessary to provide the service. Because any additional information that is revealed to third parties that is not necessarily is just at your own cost. You know, people might share this with others, services might get hacked, employees might be malicious. There's numerous ways that there can be a problem with revealing information of users that should not be revealed. So as a project, you decrease your own risk substantially when you do not collect information that you don't need to collect. And at Wasabi, we designed a system where basically the only information that we do need to know about our users is which Bitcoin address they have, right? And they want to use. But for example, we do not know that this one user has these 5 Bitcoin addresses and all of these 5 belong to the same person. We don't need to know that in order to provide a useful service. Mm-hmm. And we do that by using, well, cryptography and fancy tools of cyberspace like Chaumian eCash and other things to make this technologically possible. This was not possible before the use of cryptography. We could not have secure systems where we do not need to have reputation with our users, where we do not need to trust our users and therefore collect information from them. We can only build these systems once we have strong cryptography and well, peer-to-peer architectures and computer engineering tools. But we're building these, and this means that now we have a new set of tools with which we can provide a new set of tools and services, and that just kickstarts a cultural revolution.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Max K, how does Debify interact with KYC, reputation, privacy? I assume there's some amount of KYC required with some of the lenders, but what kind of privacy options and tools, and how do you help users in that way with Debify?
So it's basically a free market, and surprisingly, although it's like institution-based market for lenders, then in some regions, lenders are actually allowed legally to provide certain loans with no additional KYC. So it's usually stablecoin loans, right, USDT or USDC versus Bitcoin locked in collateral. But in some regions, you're legally allowed to do that without no KYC. So there's a certain level of privacy even with the institutions. But if we talk about fiat loans, then of course it's institutions. It's completely impossible to do it without KYC. Mm-hmm. So you have certain optionality even in institutionally based lending platforms where you can choose how you want to borrow. You want to borrow in stable coins with no KYC or minimum KYC, or you want to go the fiat way, where it's banks that giving you or credit funds that giving you, and they require to obtain certain information. Our main goal actually is less about privacy. It's more on onboarding institution to the non-custodial Bitcoin standard. That's our goal with Debify, and providing a global liquidity to the Bitcoiners across the globe.
Mm-hmm. And Jörg, how do you manage, how do you advise businesses and other people to deal with privacy and in the context of the current regulatory landscape, or relevant advice from you?
Yeah, it depends. So for private individuals, I think that you have to understand that Bitcoin is actually a self-regulating system, and if you embed Bitcoin in a real free market, or in a, like Ludwig von Mises called it, a catalepsy, I think that's the best regulation you can get. Because any additional regulation which is not already in the rules of Bitcoin should be voluntary by two parties making a contract, what they want to disclose, what they want to agree on. So in that sense, I think most regulation is retarded, and luckily, if you're an individual, just consider Bitcoin as as Michael said, as the exit ticket from the matrix, and delay your high time preference wishes you have until maybe you and your friends have enough purchasing power to buy the city and throw the regulators out, or move to a place in the world where you can try to build and show the world that KYC costs so much productivity or wastes so much wealth that there's a better model. So safe for that future. And if you have to live in the regulatory system, don't bring the Bitcoin back in. Then you're fine with most regulations don't affect you, I would say. And yeah, keep them under your own custody. But for companies who want to switch on the Bitcoin standard, it's usually a lot of work figuring out what is the least effort or least friction way to make effective use of Bitcoin, and that's very individual on the country you're operating in.
Mm-hmm. So lately we've seen some kind of, I guess, waves in the tide when it comes to regulatory and privacy things. We had Samurai getting in trouble. We have, Wasabi and some others have pulled out of some services out of some jurisdictions, namely the USA. Max, what allows you to operate, to offer this service when you see somebody like Samurai getting put away and you see people pulling out of the US? Like, how do you still manage to exist and keep your ass covered? And what's the dynamic going on here?
Yeah, this is certainly a very perilous time where we are on this verge of an old system and a new system where new technologies enable new services and new products being built. And then, whenever there are pioneers and entrepreneurs on the fringes of a system, there is risk involved, So, and I think everyone here in this room, to some extent, is involved in this as well. If you're in Bitcoin, this is, a risky behavior, so to say. There's a lot of, incumbent legacy systems that would benefit from Bitcoin not being there. On the other hand, though, there's a great reason why we're working on this project. Bitcoin and privacy technology as a whole is essential for human flourishing and for prosperity. So this is not just that we're doing this out of a whim. There's very good reasoning and thought process put into why we need to build systems that protect individuals. And privacy is an extremely cheap and efficient form of protection. So yes, people at the forefront of developing these tools are under substantial risk, and that's why we need to build a community of support to help the people that provide the tools that we need. This is something where I think the Bitcoin community actually is quite great at, though. I think there's a lot of support, not just for CoinJoin related services, but also for all types of other businesses. And please do your part. You don't need to be a developer to be impactful and useful to the space. Specifically in this regard, if you're a lawyer or you know lawyers or know politicians, talk to them and tell them about why we're doing what we're doing, and explain this entire project. It's obviously extremely complex and convoluted, so it takes a couple attempts before people understand why this is so exciting and so awesome. And I think with time, more and more people will understand this. I firmly believe that culture comes after technology, and once we have technologies that empower and free the individual, then I think we will foster a culture that will treasure the individual.
Mm-hmm. Leah, if privacy is so important, why is this happening? And do you have any other comments on how regulations interact with privacy efforts?
I would sign every single thing that Max just said. It's a major headache. And the headache is getting worse and worse. And there is no end to it, really. I have two hopes. One is that states and jurisdictions at one point could start competing with each other to actually offer to these kind of businesses a regulatory environment that would be welcoming or at least predictable, because now we have zero predictability. That's the first thing. Second thing, I would like to emphasize the importance of building basically open source, not for profit, non-profit projects. Because if you're not earning money on the product itself, you're getting to kind of a gray zone at least. And if the things don't go well for you, there is still someone who can come, pick up your code, tweak it, and launch it again as other open source thing. So that's something I wanted to maybe emphasize.
Yeah, there does seem to be a big legal regulatory leap with whether you're the one actually providing the service as a business. And I think that's why, for example, like with Wasabi, you can make the tools, you don't necessarily have to run the service, and that it's still useful to people. Jörg, any comments on regulatory interactions?
Yeah, maybe since this conference is under the theme Level Up, I could maybe share some best practices which are perfectly legit, I think. So many people could realize how Bitcoin in combination with other tools helps them to preserve their privacy. So for instance, I think it was 2 years ago when OpenAI launched a purely digital service. I looked at the offering and I said, okay, it's cloud-based. It's collecting all my conversation history. And to really try it out, you had to provide email address, you had to provide a phone number, you had to pay by credit card. All this is actually absolutely not necessary to use a service like this. So Bitcoin could help you in that you need to see the whole context. You use an email account which you registered via non-KYC. You either enter a fake phone number, or there are services where you can buy phone numbers for one-time purchase with sats. And to make the payment, you can use Bitcoin Lightning to buy a prepaid Visa credit card and sign up for this service. Because if you want to try out something without revealing your privacy, which I think is perfectly legit, there's a combination of tools you need to consider before even thinking about, do I need to mix my coins? Because there might be, for the thing you want to achieve, more appropriate ways to do that. And but I think people should start using that and teach these companies that all the data they are collecting is not necessary. It will only hurt people if their data breaches or leaks, and it costs so much money to maintain all this data and keep it secure from being hacked, that throw nonsense data at them until they give up, and just for something like digital services, make paper requests through Lightning, which has quite good privacy in the mass, yeah, if you have a great anonymity set. So this is something people could do easily without feeling bad, because it's like in the movie Anon. I don't know if anybody saw it. The last 2 words were, it's not that I have something to hide, but there's nothing I want you to show. And that is a mental theme Bitcoiners should embrace, that privacy is your right.
I agree. And Max, to wrap this up, you have any insights related to KYC and regulation?
No, I actually have one comment about as being covered. So I think that every sane Bitcoiner needs to understand that your ass is never covered. So be cautious, do your own research, and if you can do privacy, if you can use privacy, use it. So that's it.
Great way to end it. That wraps up the panel. If any of you have any additional questions for any of the panelists, they'll be around. They'll be coming from the backstage. You can find them walking around. So feel free to ask these professionals about their opinions on privacy and regulations in KYC.
Actually, if you come to the Amity Age stage, the big pirate ship back there will be a Q&A session after.
Oh, awesome. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.